Okay. All right. So we now have speed and audio check, please.
Sound and speed.
Okay. And Karen, let's mark it.
Kara, scene, start over. I'm as bad as David.
Take two.
After Aiden, Kara, take one.
Okay. Everybody clear and settled, and we'll check everything. All right. I think we're good. Everybody's good. All right. We're ready to roll. And I'll cue you on the shorter time. Well, actually, there's your rename right there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. We're clear and ready when you are, sir.
Kara, can you tell us your name, last name, and then the organization that you're with?
My name is Kara Smith, and I work for DeliverFund.
What does DeliverFund do?
DeliverFund's a nonprofit that equips, trains, and advises law enforcement on how to combat human trafficking using counterterrorism methodologies.
Well, what you can divulge, what is your background?
I was an intelligence analyst in the United States Air Force for 6 years, and I was doing SIGINT work at the National Security Agency. I also deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan, combating counterterrorism. When I got out of the military, I contracted with the NSA for another year, and then I started working for the FBI doing counterterrorism watch listing.
So your history and your background is on building these cases, correct? I mean, in profiling, counterterrorism, etc. Is that a skill set that you're now applying inside DeliverFund?
My background is finding bad people doing bad things, and it's exactly what I've taken to combat human trafficking.
Talk to me a little bit about what you can, about some of the tools that's accessible to you that law enforcement, general law enforcement, not the NSA or CIA, but that general law enforcement police departments do not have access to.
So I use some tools that the federal law enforcement and the intelligence community have these within their possession for the most part because of counterterrorism. There's a lot of money that backs these tools. But for local police departments and detective units throughout the country, they don't have the tools that they can utilize to properly target human trafficking. DeliverFund has gone ahead and helped to develop out these tools that can be made accessible at an affordable price to law enforcement, sitting on top of a database of a bunch of information that DeliverFund and law enforcement agencies we've partnered with have been stockpiling so that law enforcement across the United States can use these tools in their counter-human trafficking divisions to drastically cut the time it takes to find a human trafficker.
Since you've started to fight trafficking with your unique skill set, and I'm really happy that, by the way, that it's a woman that has that skill set. Have you seen change in this crime, positive or negative, or lateral? Any change that's significant that you feel is worth mentioning?
So, combating trafficking, the target set of human trafficking, was very new to me. As many Americans, I was just the same. I didn't know what human trafficking was. But even within the short time that I've been doing this, over a year and a half now, I've seen the target set and the traffickers and how they're working significantly change. It changes from day to day. It changes from location to location. And every time law enforcement creates something new on how to get ahead of this situation, they have to pivot. And that's what something DeliverFund is very good at, instructing law enforcement on how to do.
If we can completely break the ice and just get real loose with it, Kara, and speak freely, what are some of your frustrations and challenges that you're facing right now in the fight as a whole? Maybe on the demand side, maybe on the trafficker side, which is your focus, right? To find that trafficker. But what are some of the frustrations that you're dealing with?
As a woman, as a mother, I am extremely appalled with the fact that nobody knows what human trafficking is when I first bring it up. I go, hey, I work at this amazing nonprofit that combats human trafficking. And they go, oh, so what countries do they come from? And I'm like, no. No, it's not like the movies. They don't come from different countries. They come from down the street from where you live. They come from when the friends and family has lost their child who ran away. The victims of human trafficking are everywhere. And then what really upsets me is when people don't take it seriously, because people need to take it seriously so that they can make everybody aware so we could start going after the demand. How do I put this? There wouldn't be human trafficking if there wasn't a demand to supply the victims in the first place.
What do you think fuels that demand?
Let's see. In the United States, it's men that fuel the demand for traffickers. It's men thinking that they can get what they want it and when they want it because they've been given this false narrative that sex is something that they're owed.
Pornography play a role?
Pornography plays a huge role in human trafficking. It's the progression, which starts watching the pornography, whether these men are married, not married, or if they have a girlfriend or not. They want what they see, and they continuously watch it, and just watching it is no longer good enough for them. The dopamine levels that they're receiving start to not be as high as they used to be. And within these pornography websites, there's advertisements pasted around the outside of the pornography itself, basically screaming at these men like, oh, you can just order a girl right up down the street. And eventually they're going to click on that ad and see what it's about. And it might take them some time, but then they're going to contact somebody in those ads. They're going to order up sex like a pizza, and they're not really going to care who's on the other end.
Can you talk to me a little bit about your ability without, you don't want to inform the bad guys, so talk about your ability to build a case for law enforcement and how long it takes them to build the same case?
So before DeliverFund, sorry, I don't want to say so bad. Work on my interview skills. Before DeliverFund, it was taking law enforcement roughly 22 days to build out and develop a case to target a human trafficker and save the victims that he had. With the methodologies that we use, the searching techniques and the tools that we provide, we have significantly cut that down to roughly about 5 to 6 hours worth of work to develop out a case and pinpoint the location of the trafficker. This is extremely important because, as we know, traffickers move constantly. They go from city to city, hotel to hotel, apartment to Airbnb, or any other kind of place that they can go ahead and move their girls and make their money without being detected. So being able to cut down on the time it takes a case is extremely important.
Tell me, when you start building these cases, are they operating in just a certain social class? And are they connected? Is there a connection between some of these traffickers? I mean, is it organized to a degree?
The organization of the traffickers themselves, it really depends on the location and the city that they're working in. And it's a vast variety of people that are doing it. It's not just men that's trafficking, it's also women that are trafficking other women as well. We've seen it in certain locations where it's deeply gang affiliated. And there's other instances where I've noticed traffickers stay out of certain cities altogether. And they're all over the place, but they never hit a certain city. And it makes me wonder, which I haven't confirmed, but who did they piss off in that city So who in that city is running who gets to be there or not? What organization is overarching in the trafficking pimp industry in that location?
Is this at all, just as I'm asking the question and make a little change, is this at all, any aspect on the trafficker side? Definitely the question is for the buy side. Is this at all a white collar crime?
I don't think it's fair to call it a white collar crime, because white collar crimes sound like it's not something that's bad. It's not fair to call it that. It's not innocent that they went out and they bought a girl. They can't and they shouldn't say that I didn't know. When you look at these victims, and hopefully soon to be survivors, they don't look like what they look like in the images in the ads. And the images in the ads aren't very good either. When they get picked up, they are beaten, they are thin, they're worn down, they're drugged up. They're really shadows of who they really could be inside. And so for a man to go in and purchase a woman for sex and not recognize this person is in distress and try to claim it was an innocent, white-collared crime, that's completely inaccurate in my opinion.
The buyers, according to your opinion, do we have some community leaders, some family men? Are these thugs buying? Who are predominantly, according to you, and what you've seen in profiling building cases, who are the buyers? And then we'll get to who are the traffickers.
The buyers of the women that are being trafficked here in the United States are any person, of course, mainly men, with disposable income. So that could be your neighbor down the street that's a doctor. It could be an airline pilot. It's your local construction worker. It's the principal of your children's school. It can be anybody when you walk down the street. I travel for work, and sometimes I get on an airplane and I wonder, I'm like, how many did I pass in here? Because I know that they're there. And it's interesting being able to speak to groups and different, audiences, because when you start talking about human trafficking, who they are, you could be standing up in that audience and you could see who they are because they cringe. And they take a deep breath or they shake their head at the facts because they're in denial themselves that what they have been doing is absolutely immoral and outrageous and, in essence, a form of rape.
Who is profiling these girls and courting them, courting boys, and who's selling them? Who are these pimps, as we call them?
Human traffickers are the scum of society. They have an ego and a mindset to where they believe that the only thing that matters in the world is their success, their wealth, and their independence. Some of these people that are trafficking these women think of themselves as entrepreneurs. They run these girls like they're running a business. And some of them believe they're running a well-oiled business. And they treat what they're doing like it's their own American dream.
How frequently, when you start building a case, do you find that these guys move extensively? Do they move in a 2-state circle, a 5-state circle, or could it be a guy's in California and then you're tracking him in Miami? Or, is the movement significant?
When it comes to movement of girls by human traffickers, it really depends on the trafficker himself, how seasoned he is, how bold he is. If he has a really strong stable in a certain location with a lot of regulars that he has under control, he might keep them in that area for quite a long time. a lot of more of the independent traffickers will work the Southwest, or they might have a track per se that runs up to Florida to New York, or one that runs Atlanta to New Orleans over to Houston. It's really interesting. You can see them moving extensively, and you could also see with the technologies we have that sometimes they all get brought to one location, and then they get split off into other locations where they're trading girls, selling girls, and splitting them off. The first time I ever noticed, and it was very early on in the process of how I was learning this target set, it started in Houston, Texas, and I saw a bunch of girls get switched up and move around and go to different locations. And that was when I recognized where the issue was with the strip clubs. Because they were, and I guess they might have been having some like kind of convention of pimps, and they all came together probably under a guise of some rap music festival, and they were all in the same location in a short amount of period of time. And I was able to follow the girls there, and then girls that I'd never seen over in California, in Arizona, were now there instead of down in Miami.
You mentioned strip clubs. Share your thoughts with me about strip clubs.
Strip clubs not only perpetuate the ideas to men that it's okay to exploit women for their own pleasure, but strip clubs are also used on a regular basis to sell girls for sex. Traffickers will bring them in and put them up on stage while they're sitting right there watching it happen and sell them off, where they're not even touching the internet at that point, making it harder for traffickers to be caught. Can I tell you a real quick story?
Yes.
I was in the military, and I'll 100% say when I was lower enlisted, I ended up in a strip club with all the guys hanging out one time. And I didn't know it at the time, but it was like this hole-in-the-wall strip club. It was awful. I was just trying to tag along and impress the other guys in the military that I worked with. And there were two girls up on stage, and they had track marks in their arms. And they just, in my mind at the time, because I didn't know any better, I was like, they're awful strippers. They're just drugged up strippers. But in the corner, there were two large males that were tatted up and had jewelry around their necks and were watching the girls very closely. And it wasn't until 14 years later, when I started what I do now, did I recognize that the girls up on that stage were being trafficked. And if I hadn't been surrounded by strong military males protecting me, it could only have taken me walking to the bathroom at the wrong time to be snatched up myself.
Now, the purpose of this documentary, Kara, is to take independent opinion. You didn't get these questions ahead of time. And my trust was that God would weave a story. In an interview right before yours was by a girl who formerly was in that industry. And you just, in one sentence, 100% corroborated everything she said. And that's why this documentary is being made, so that people around the world can see that these are truths. These are not just one person's opinion, but by default, across the NSA, FBI, saying exactly what a girl experienced in Texas. So thank you for doing it. Other stories like that, other occasions is very valuable. So if that comes to mind, please share. Just say, got a story, I got to share. In your opinion, for your job, how would decriminalizing prostitution or legalizing prostitution, which is really where I believe the country is trying to go, like the Netherlands, what would that do to your job? Would it have an impact?
DeliverFund, we don't have a stance on prostitution itself. We fight human trafficking. If they were to legalize prostitution, there would be no difference. Just because something's legalized and regulated, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to make it better. We've seen that with everything across the board, whether it be alcohol, tobacco, the legalization of marijuana in several states now. It doesn't mean people are not going to abuse it. Doesn't mean people aren't going to sell it illegally. It's not going to make a difference. But if they legalize it, in my personal opinion, I think it's only going to make it worse because it's going to give human traffickers the ability to hide behind something that's an absolute false truth of what's happening.
The angle that I was thinking is just it might make your job more difficult because it may embolden them. Interesting thing I want to talk to you about. In your office, we had a conversation, and Jeremy and I had this conversation, and he did not say this on camera, so he asked me to lead you in this direction. There's a way to choke the traffickers with technology. If you will, please talk about the ability to track banking, transactions, purchases. Jeremy was talking about, look, we can stop them from being able to buy groceries, right? Talk a little bit about that, because now you're raising the risk profile for a trafficker.
With intelligence-led policing, and the technologies that we have and the partnerships that we're currently forming with certain organizations around the country, whether it be in the financial industry or other industries that human traffickers touch, we believe that we'll be able to reduce human trafficking in the United States by 80% in the next 5 years. And we'll do that by not allowing human traffickers to even live. They won't be able to put money into a bank account. They won't be able to go buy groceries at the store. They won't be able to get a loan on a vehicle. They won't even be able to buy a vehicle with cash, because the trafficker himself will be flagged as a criminal, and it will be looked upon that he shouldn't even be able to go out into society and do anything.
So raising that risk profile, is definitely something I think we need to do, because they are very blasé. My opinion, they're very, very coy with what they're doing. Some even posting online pictures of girls they're trafficking. Are you seeing some of that? Are you seeing some of that bravado behavior?
Human traffickers are chauvinistic narcissists. They believe everybody loves them and the law does not apply to them, and they definitely don't have any empathy. And with that, they go ahead and they show it off on social media on a daily basis. Even when they are rolled up by law enforcement, they make jokes about who they are and what they do when they get out and off their charges. There's one trafficker that I follow on social media that signs his posts the RICO Act. He's just that blatant. And the only reason why he would know that in the first place is that he was likely charged with it at one point in time. They don't care what they're doing. And if we could raise the awareness and we can choke them down, whether it be not allowing them to touch financial institutions, or raise the awareness within the social media providers themselves that this is happening, because they're not just being chauvinistic, they're recruiting and they're selling girls on their platforms.
You're in this tech space, for sure. You're deep in it. Is social media playing a role here? The actual organizations, can they do better? And I know we've got the First Amendment rights, but this is a blurry thing for me. First Amendment and then juveniles.
1 minute.
Social media platforms and the organizations that support them could do a lot better. I know that they're trying right now, but they could do better if they partner up with law enforcement and nonprofits like DeliverFund to help weed out the traffickers within their platforms.
I'm going to cut here and change the cards. We're not quite done yet.
Okay, yeah, no problem.
If you want some water.
Can I stop?